Ahoy hoy, I'm Planewalk, and in my last video I took a look at Matt Powell. In this video I wanted to do something a little bit different. Rather than taking a look at someone's content, I want to issue a challenge to Kent Hovind. Now as far as I know, I'm not on Kent Hovind's radar, so this video may be met with complete and utter silence, which is fair. However, I'm still going to issue this challenge, and whilst it may be directed at Kent Hovind, if you're someone that believes in the Bible, feel free to tackle it yourself. Now one thing I do have to say first is that recently Dan offered Kent Hovind a challenge of his own. Now, I did not get this idea from Dan. In fact, I had this idea before Dan issued his challenge. When I actually saw Dan's challenge, I was actually worried that it was going to be the exact same as my own. And fortunately it wasn't, so I can still make this video. Now the idea for this challenge actually came from watching Emma Thorne's video. And I was reminded whilst watching that video of a debate that Kent Hovind had with Professor Dave Explains. It was a fair while ago. Now in this video, what Professor Dave tried to do is he tried to ask Kent Hovind, does he have any evidence for the Bible? And Kent Hovind's amazing, brilliant response was, this is not a debate about the Bible, it is a debate about evolution, so I'm not going to provide any evidence for the Bible at this point. Of course, this is one of those rare instances in which Kent Hovind actually has somewhat of a point. Whilst I disagree with the point that he is trying to make, I can see that there is a valid point to be made there. Now the point that Kent Hovind made that I agree with, although I do not think that he made this point intentionally, it's kind of just a side product of what he was trying to get at to avoid answering questions about the Bible, is that evolution and the Bible have nothing to do with each other. Now what I mean by this is, if you debunk evolution, then that does not mean that the Bible is true. If you debunk the Bible, then that does not mean that evolution is true. Likewise, you can also believe in the Bible, yet still believe that evolution occurred. At the end of the day, it really comes down to, do you accept the evidence for evolution and do you accept the evidence for the Bible? But that is where my issue and the challenge lies. Because I've not really seen any compelling evidence for the Bible. The best evidence that I have seen is one prophecy in Daniel 2 which explains about certain kingdoms of the world. The particulars of it, and I'm going to simplify here, is that there was a king that had a dream about a statue, and the statue had a head of gold, chest and shoulders of silver, a belly and waist of bronze, legs of iron, and feet of clay and iron. And then Daniel comes along, tells the king, yeah mate, that represents the kingdoms that are going to rule over Earth, and the head is your kingdom. Now, there are multiple interpretations as to what all these kingdoms are. Obviously, the gold head is Babylon because it says it in the story. As for the rest, however, when I look on most Christian websites, it claims that the silver represents the Medo-Persian Empire, the bronze represents the Greek Empire, and then the iron represents the Roman Empire. They also claim that the two legs are representative of how there was a divide between the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. Now obviously around the time of Daniel, around 600 BC, they had no idea that all these empires are going to appear and that the Roman Empire would be split in two. The problem is that the book of Daniel wasn't written at that time. It was actually written around 165 BC, when a couple of these empires had already appeared. All that's left really was the Roman Empire to appear. And not everyone agrees that the iron legs were meant to represent the Roman Empire. In fact, a lot of scholars argue that the iron legs were actually meant to represent the Greek Empire, and that the bronze represented the Persians, and that the silver represented the Medes. Now what would have been really cool and really convincing is if a bald eagle made of lightning just flew in at the end of the prophecy, and that represents the modern world. Now that would have been convincing. Now people are probably wondering two things. The first being, why did I go into all that? And the second being, what is actually the challenge here? Now the challenge here is very similar to Kent Hovind's challenge of give me your 3 best pieces of evidence for evolution. My challenge instead is give me your 3 best pieces of evidence for the Bible. Now why did I go into that spiel about the book of Daniel? The reason being is because it is one of the better pieces of evidence for the Bible that I have seen. In fact, it's a pretty good example of what I'm expecting when it comes to evidence, because a lot of Christians do point to the Bible as evidence. Now, you can use the Bible as evidence as long as it is referring to something outside of the Bible. The issue is when Christians point to the Bible as evidence of the Bible, and then don't back it up with anything outside of the Bible. The classic example that people give is when people say, oh, the Bible is the Word of God, and it says it right here in the Bible, so it must be the Word of God. Another reason why I went into that spiel is so that I don't get presented with, well, did you know that the book of Daniel says this and makes this prophecy? It's a good way to preemptively kill an argument that I've already heard before. I want some really good, hard-hitting arguments that are gonna convince me, okay? Now, there are a few things that I do have to just reiterate. Evidence against evolution is not evidence for the Bible. Evidence against the Earth being billions of years old is not evidence for the Bible. If you say, well, the moon has been moving away from the Earth at this rate, so therefore the Earth cannot be millions of years old, that is not evidence for the Bible. Likewise, evidence for a god or gods is not necessarily evidence for the Bible. You might end up proving that there has to be a god or something, but then I'll end up believing in Thor or something. I wonder if anybody thought that this was Jesus. Some people have actually asked me, is that Jesus? And I've told them, no, it's Thor. Now, another argument that I want to get out of the way before it's brought up is the argument that Noah's Ark has been found, apparently. It is odd that every few years Noah's Ark is found in a different location. Maybe it just keeps on moving. I mean, it is a boat. Maybe it's a boat that travels on land and it just moves. And for some reason people don't notice that it keeps moving. The most recent example I can find of Noah's Ark being found is this example right here, where you can clearly see Noah's Ark there apparently. I don't know about Noah's Ark, but there is something there that I see which I'm not too sure is appropriate for YouTube. Either that or I've got the wrong Google Chrome tab open. Either one is likely. Jokes aside, this is clearly an instance of pareidolia. People have seen the shape of a boat where there is no boat. So that is another argument that I just wanted to prematurely get out of the way so that, so that Kent Hovind or anyone else that responds to this doesn't waste their time. Now it's just a matter of seeing who responds to this video, and if a person that responds to this video happens to be Kent Hovind. And Kent, if you happen to be watching, ahoy hoy, how's it going? But anyway, leave a like and subscribe if you liked that video. Leave a comment letting me know what you'd like me to do in future videos. As always, a big shout out to my $20 or more patrons. Hugh Jarsz, M.C.Nutkin, SHaKie, Wolfie, Morrie, Graymore Ghost, KidVicious, and Sacha Campbell. If you want to support me financially, you can do so on Patreon. There should be a link right there. But anyway, I will see you in the next video. Between you and me, thank you for watching.